So thanks everyone for being here. My name is Baylee Butler. I'm a senior staff attorney with Southeastern Ohio Legal Services, and I'm going to be talking to you guys about public benefits for kinship caregivers in Ohio. So just a little bit about me. I work for Southeastern Ohio Legal Services. We're a nonprofit law firm representing low-income individuals and seniors. We're a legal aid organization. If you've ever heard of legal aid, we do civil legal work, no criminal work, but provide needed resources and legal representation to families who can't afford an attorney but need one in situations like evictions, public benefits, custody, that kind of thing. I got my start with the kinship process and trying to understand what the kinship process in Ohio looks like and the foster care system through a project that was funded called the Youth Law Project, which was really focused on youth who were aging out of foster care and needing assistance, getting their first apartments or getting their benefits and figuring out kind of how they could, kind of enter the world of adulthood. And in order to do that, I really had to understand, the world they were coming from. If it was a kinship situation or a foster care situation, how much support did they have, and how could I support them as they were, moving into the next phase of life. That kind of springboarded into a Department of Justice grant called the Appalachian Children's Victims Assistance and Prevention Project, which really was focused on understanding the opioid epidemic in Southeast Ohio and how children and families were impacted beyond just the addiction, beyond just the need for, recovery services, but also, what was the collateral damage of that epidemic and how were our children and our communities faring when it came to the opioid epidemic. So really, through that, talking to a lot of different people, doing a lot of different work on those projects really helped me understand a lot and delve into the area of kinship and, the foster world to kind of understand what that looks like to help answer some of your questions. The topics we're going to cover today are a lot. I'm going to cover a lot of benefits. I really want to kind of give you guys a little information about every one. It's not just going to be kinship benefits. I want to give you an idea of all of the benefits that are available in Ohio as much as I can, and that how you might be eligible or your family might be eligible for those benefits. So we're going to talk about cash benefits, and that's where the majority of our kinship benefits come in. So Kinship Permanency Incentive Program, KPI, Ohio Works First, kinship support payments. We'll talk a little bit about prevention, retention, and contingency programs. Then we'll move into food assistance. We'll talk about SNAP, WIC, food banks, pandemic EBT. We'll also talk about healthcare and wellness, just the Medicaid, Help Me Grow, Ohio Rise, and then other family support services that might be available in your community, like childcare, heat and weatherization, housing assistance, and adoption subsidies. And then at the end, I'll give you a little information about Ohio Can. I think you've probably already had a presentation, or there might have been a presentation from an Ohio Can or Ohio Kinship and Adoption Navigator Program come and talk to you. If you haven't, I recommend it. I don't work for Ohio Can, but I do serve on one of the regional advisory boards. So I have a little bit of information about that as well to kind of share. So I'm going to try to get through it in an hour. I kept adding to this presentation because I was like, oh, what about this? Oh, what about this? So hopefully I don't take too much of your time, but I do want to make sure I leave time for questions. So one caveat I want to have is that I do only work in Ohio. I am only licensed to practice in Ohio. So all the information I'm going to be providing to you today is just for Ohio. If you are living elsewhere, if you have kinship or children from elsewhere, I cannot guarantee that these benefits are going to be available to you. But in Ohio, it's important to know that each public benefit program is different. They might be ran by different agencies. They might be ran by the same agency. A lot of them are ran by the Department of Job and Family Services. But even within Department of Job and Family Services, they might require different application for each benefit, different income or eligibility criteria, different relationship you might need to have to the child. So all of it's a little different. So it's important to kind of understand, the important takeaways are to understand where to go to ask the questions and to see if you are eligible. You might need to verify proof of relationship to the child, your income, identity of each member of the household, or sometimes household expenses. Some benefits require a background check, so it's important to kind of understand what those rules and regulations are. My job in legal services, we really help people when their applications for assistance are delayed or they've been denied. And we can also represent individuals in administrative hearings whenever there are appeals to appeal a decision that's been made by ODJFS, Ohio Department of Job and Family Services, or other benefits have been terminated or delayed or denied. So with that caveat and information aside, we're going to move into cash assistance. The first thing that I talk to about people when I talk about cash assistance is Ohio Works First, which is really, when people say cash assistance, that's what they're talking about is Ohio Works First. This is also, I think, old, previously it was known as welfare and that kind of stuff, but Ohio's really kind of segregated out what welfare means into several different benefits. So Ohio Works First is the cash money that you're talking about. There's two different avenues to get into cash benefits or Ohio Works First. You can do a child-only assistance group or a household assistance group. Whenever you're doing a child-only assistance group, the caregiver's income does not matter. So it doesn't necessarily matter how much that caregiver makes. So you do not have to be low income. You do have to be related to that child by blood or marriage, or have a legal guardianship or custodianship of that child. So you have to have custody or something if you are not blood or marriage. But if you are related to them by blood or marriage, then you do not have to have a legal relationship to the child. They just have to be in your home. Now, this will be the payment is lower for these types of for child only, because only the child is considered in the household. They're not considering anybody else in the household, which can be good or bad. It can mean that you're not getting as much just because their other household members aren't considered. But it also means that they're not considered, so there's no work requirements, there's no time limit for the receipts, that kind of thing. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. You will be required to cooperate with child support requirements. There are some exceptions for domestic violence situations or if it's unsafe for you to do so. But generally speaking, you'll have to make sure that you are following through with anything the agency needs you to do to file for child support. That doesn't mean that you're going to be going after them for child support. What it means is that the agency is going to recoup as much as they can from the bio parents who are obligated to pay child support. It will pay directly to the state, and then the state will pay you benefits. It doesn't affect how much you get in benefits. They could be making $0 or be in prison or anything like that, but they could be obligated to pay that arrearage back, and then your amount will stay the same. Benefits are issued through either an Ohio EPI card, which is a prepaid debit or debit MasterCard, or they'll be deposited directly into a checking or savings account. If something happens to the checking or savings account, you need to notify JFS right away so that they can change that information. I've seen several times where people have either got locked out of their checking account or their checking account or savings account have been overdrawn, and then the money kind of really just goes to pay fees and things like that. There's no way to get that back. So you really need to be proactive and pay attention to where your account is so that you can make those changes ahead of time. As of November 2021, OWF for child only for only one child was $306 a month. For two child, it was $417 a month. And then it's kind of like $95 to $100 depending on each individual child. You do not get $306 per child. So that's important for later and other benefits when you're comparing benefits, but it really kind of goes down at the number of kids that you have in your home. Now, that's kind of the child only situation. If you're low income, you may be eligible for an assistance group for the entire household to have OWF. That will depend on each individual household's unique resources, and they're depending on the ability, physical abilities of each household member. Household members may be subject and required to do work hours, and that is time limited to 36 months. So you can only receive 36 months across the entire life. It's not 36 months in succession. So they just pick up where you left off. You get it later on down the road. So it's kind of important to understand which ones you might be eligible for and which ones you want to apply for based on if you've had it in the past and your time limited off, or you can't do those work requirements. You might be eligible for OWF child only in that situation. Now, one thing I want to make sure I tell you is that this is different if the natural or bio parent also resides in the household. If the bio parent is in the household, then they are the ones who are required to apply and receive the benefit, even if the grandparent or kinship or aunt and uncle or relative or kinship caregiver is the one with custody or caring for the child. So if they're the one caring for the child, doesn't matter, bio parents there, they have to be the ones to apply. Now, the newer one that people always ask about is the Kinship Support Program, or KSP. This is monthly cash assistance for caregivers of children placed in the home by Children's Services. So there has to be an open case. Children's Services had to have placed them in your home, and there has to be an open court case against the bio parent or previous custodian for abuse, neglect, or dependency. Now, this situation for KSP, it's very limited. It stops after 6 months, or when the caregiver becomes a licensed foster parent or foster caregiver, or the case closes, whichever is first. So if the caregiver, if the case ends relatively quickly and it gets dismissed or finished or what have you, then the payment's no longer eligible for the caregiver. If the caregiver becomes a licensed foster caregiver, then they are entitled to the foster parent premium, or the money that the foster system says that they get, which is generally a little bit more anyway, so that's fine. Or if you decide not to go for that route and the case doesn't close, then after 6 months, the payments are done. Now, the payments are $10.20 per day for each child placed in the home, which totals to about $306 per month per child. Now, if you remember, this is the same amount that you would get if you were on child-only OWF, but this is per child. So if you have more than one child in your home, then you would be entitled to the KSP amount of $306 per child. But like I said, that child has to have been placed in your home by Children's Services as part of an abuse, neglect, dependency case. There's no application. You're supposedly automatically paid by the county Children's Services agency. If you haven't received it, or paper check, you need to get with your caseworker if you think you qualify. Now, these numbers do go down, or I guess up, depending on how you look at it. If the child was placed in the kinship home on or before the end of 2020, then they can receive KSP for 9 months, but that will have been over by now. If the child was placed in the home between December of 2020 and September of 2021, then payments can also go for 9 months. But if the child has been placed in the home after September 30th of 2021, then it's only 6 months that it can go in. So I think at this point, we're probably at the 6 month mark, which is why it's on here, as it says it stops after 6 months. You cannot get both OWF and KSP. It's one or the other. Generally, if the child is placed in the home by Children's Services, there's an open case in court. KSP is automatic, and it's more money, it's the same amount of money if you only have one child, and it's more money if you have 2 or more children. However, if after 6 months, the case is still ongoing, you've not gotten your license to be a foster caregiver because you don't want that, then you could then roll over to OWF child only. The payment might decrease if you have more than one child, but it's still something. So we talked about kinship support payments, talked about OWF. Now there's something even more, also called the Kinship Permanency Incentive Program, which is KPI or KPIP or KPIP. They call it a bunch of different things. These payments are time-limited incentive payments to offset costs of placement and can continue at 6-month intervals. Now, the difference here is that these are for kids who you have gotten custody of. So there's been a final court order that says kid is in your home, whether it is a private custody action, meaning that you have gone yourself and filed against bio parent or former custodian, and the court has said, yep, they get to go into your household, and that case is closed. Or if it is through Children's Services, and Children's Services, they've gotten a permanent custody order to you that way. Either way, as long as there is a final court order, the case is closed, then you might be eligible for KPI. KPI is for families who have a gross income, so not the net, not what you receive, but like how much you actually supposedly make before taxes and everything. So the gross family income, so everyone in the household, cannot exceed 300% of the federal poverty level. If that is the case and you are under 300% FPL, then you might be eligible for KPI if you have the final court order. These are, like I said, these are a maximum incentive amount not to exceed 8 payments and no longer than 48 consecutive months. So generally you get one, and then every 6 months thereafter you get one until you've reached your 8 payments. You have to have been awarded legal custody on or after July 1st, 2005. We're getting to the point where those kiddos are almost 18, so hopefully I won't need to put that on here much longer, or I shouldn't need to put that on here much longer. But in order to get KPI, even if you've gone, it shouldn't be hard if they've gone through the Children's Services system, but if you've done a private custody action, then Children's Services will have to conduct a home assessment and approve the child's placement that it is a safe home for the child, and then you'd be eligible for those payments. And the allotment is about $525 per child for the first time, and then $300 per child every 6 months, up to 8 total payments. So it's not a lot. It's supposed to help with things like, school clothes or things that come up like once a year that you really don't, that you're trying to get established. School supplies, school clothes, a bed, if they're growing, that kind of a thing, to kind of get you set up. But it's after you've already received the custody the custody decision, and then you can start receiving payments after you've had the background check and the home assessment. And then last for the cash assistance or cash funds is prevention, retention, and contingency funds. This is financial assistance to help low-income families find and maintain employment and address barriers to self-sufficiency. So this is not just for kinship families. Some counties have carved out like a special piece of their PRC, which is what they call PRC funds, for kinship caregivers, but not every county has done that in Ohio. But everybody who is low income would be eligible for these for PRC to get clothing, shelter assistance, transportation. I've seen it used for, people need to get to and from a job and the car broke down or they blew a tire and it's so much money to get a tire and they just can't afford it. PRC funds can help do that. You have to have a child under the age of 18 in the home and be a custodian of that minor child. So you have to have that final custody arrangement. But the availability and requirements vary from county to county. So you really want to contact your local Job and Family Services office to see if you would qualify for assistance and how to apply. Each county gets to make their own PRC plan each year. So those change. And it's the most flexible funding that JFS receives. So they can use it for certain things. They can earmark it for certain types of individuals. Kinship is probably the wider one that most counties have earmarked it for. So if there are additional things with kinship, you might want to reach out to PRC to see if you would be eligible for anything else. And that could be for, really anything to help the kiddo. If you want to, you want to get their birth certificate, you need to get a copy of their birth certificate for something, or some kind of record, and you can't afford that. PRC might be able to loan you money or give you money to do that. It's not a loan; it is a grant. But they would give you money to get that, so that you can not have to pay that out of pocket. So just reach out to them and see what they can help you with if you're having some of those expenses. So we're going to talk about food assistance. So SNAP, or the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, it's formerly known as food stamps. It does not have a child-only option. So it is a whole household situation, meaning that if the child is in your household, then you have to meet certain income requirements as an entire household to determine eligibility. If everyone in the household is preparing meals together and eat together. Now, let's say that you have, you're a grandparent, you've got your grandchildren, and you have another child who is the aunt or uncle, right, of the grandchild that you have, right, who lives in the household too. And maybe that your other child is making money and they're saving, right, and they're doing different things, but they don't really contribute to your household because they're saving for their own stuff or doing other things. If you can prove to Job and Family Services that other adult individual prepares meals separately, buys their own meals separately, you keep them in a separate place in the fridge separately, they have different cabinets, or they have a cabinet dedicated just to their food, then you can take out their income. But there's a little bit more that you have to do to kind of show that. So if you have that situation, I recommend contacting your local legal aid program to help you kind of do that. But there are ways around, whole household situations. But generally speaking, in order to get food assistance, you have to be low income, under 100% of the federal poverty level, and that is gross income for the entire household. Now, you will be required to show proof of housing to kind of deduct that, right? So your housing expenses, like your rent, your mortgage payments, those come off the top of your gross income to kind of help you meet eligibility. You need to show proof of income, bank statements. If you have childcare expenses, those can also come off the top. And then other benefits that you receive may also, help kind of go into that calculation as well. If you're eligible, the benefits will be approved and then they'll be placed on a debit card that you can then use for, and that's an EBT card, an electronic benefit transfer card, a plastic debit card that you can use for food items. It cannot be used to buy non-food items. It cannot be used to buy soap, diapers, alcohol, or tobacco, or anything like that. It's only food items. But that is the general food assistance program that we have in Ohio. Now, because of the pandemic, we have had extended pandemic and pandemic summer electronic benefit transfer programs, which is the PEBT. These are for kiddos who are in preschool, pre-K through 12th grade in eligible school buildings. So if the building is determined to be a low-income building or everyone meets a certain threshold, you'll know this if it is a situation where everybody in the school gets free breakfast and free lunch. And you don't have to actually individually apply. If it's just across the board, everybody gets it regardless of income because so many people in the school district are low income. Or if you are just individually eligible, then they are getting the PEBT. And you should have already received those, frankly, but I just want to let you kind of know what that is. It's additional money that goes on the EBT cards during the pandemic to kind of recoup for times when school was closed. It started out, in 2020, whenever school buildings were closed down, and then it was everyone was like, okay, well, these schools aren't feeding these kids because schools are closed, so they're not providing that breakfast and that lunch that those low-income students were relying on. So therefore, we're going to give them extra money on their food stamp and their benefit card, their SNAP card. Well, then schools kind of came back and were online, but then people were like, well, wait a minute, we're closed during summer. And the pandemic is still going on. People are still really strapped for money and a lot of people are unemployed. So it got extended and said, okay, well, over the summer then, we will make sure that the kids have extra money. So what that looks like is each child receiving $7.10 per day, the combined daily federal reimbursement rate for breakfast, lunch, and a snack for the school year for 55 days over the summer, totaling $390. So that was divided into two increments. The first increment, the $191.70 were issued at the end of June. The second payment will be issued at the end of July. And everyone's food stamps or food assistance has been also increased during the pandemic. I think the state held, they went ahead and maxed out everybody's limit because it used to be based on income and based on work requirements and all these different things. But during the pandemic, they've just said, you know what, everybody gets the full allotment. We're not going to do any of that calculation. We don't know what everyone's situation is. The world's crazy right now. Everyone gets that full allotment. So everyone was receiving that. That'll probably go away before the end of this year, I imagine. Then they'll start doing those recalculations and seeing where everybody is. So I think we're going to see a lot of people falling off of those benefits over the next couple months. But for now, the PEBT, the additional pandemic dollars, the additional summer food dollars for students is what you're seeing, and you should see an increase on those on your card if you haven't. You should contact JFS. Finally, there is WIC, the Women, Infants, and Children's Program, which is a supplemental feeding program for healthcare referrals and nutritional programming for infants and children from birth to age 5. A lot of people tell me, I talk to a lot of kinship caregivers and they're like, oh, I didn't know I was eligible for WIC because I just assumed that was for pregnant mothers and bio mothers. No, it is for the child. So if you are receiving a child, regardless of the age between birth and 5, then you can be entitled to receiving that assistance as well. You just need to go to your WIC office, let them know that you have the child and that you're looking for additional assistance. You could receive those healthcare referrals for the kiddos who might need a little bit of extra attention or a little extra care if they're not meeting milestones, things like that. Nutritional programming, if you need help kind of understanding what the child can eat and all those different things and how to prepare healthy meals, they can help with those types of things. Also, with your regular, milk, bread, those types of things as well. You can get extras there. It's income based and The caregiver resources do count towards eligibility, so they do count the household of the caregiver. And it's usually operated by either a community action organization or your county health district. So you can do a little bit of asking around to find out where your local WIC office is and apply there. Finally, when it comes to food, local food banks. Contact churches, community action agencies, or other social services agencies in your area to locate your nearest food bank. When you contact them, you should also ask about any requirements or documentation that you might need. Some require you to prove income eligibility. Some require you to have a voucher from another organization saying that you need assistance or you're receiving assistance elsewhere. I know in Ross County, in order to get assistance from the Good Samaritan Food Pantry, you have to have a voucher from Community Action. So just make sure when you contact them, you kind of ask what that process looks like so that you can be prepared whenever you go there. And then a lot of them are very, very well stocked. It's better than shopping at some groceries. I know the one in Ross County, had a lot of stuff that, like, whenever the formula situation was going on, a really big issue, the food bank had no problem. They had a ton of it available. So just make sure you're asking around and seeing what those look like. And even if you don't need even if you don't need the food bank for everything, if there's something you're not able to find that you really need for your household, like the formula, then contact them and see if they have them available to you, because you might be eligible for them and be able to kind of supplement what you're able to get. Okay, so we'll move on to help with medical expenses. So Healthy Start and Healthy Families Medicaid programs offer free and low-cost comprehensive healthcare coverage to families and children up to 18 or up to 19 years old and pregnant women who have a limited income. So this is income-based. Well, it is generally income-based, I'll say that. There is no legal relationship required for the child. So you do not have to have custody of the child. As long as the child is in your home, you can apply for them. If you're receiving OWF through a child-only case, or if the child has been placed in your home by Children's Services, then the children in your care are automatically eligible and no other application needs to be made. So if you're receiving OWF child-only or you're receiving kinship support KSP dollars, then you should already have that Medicaid. Like, that should be an automatic process. You should get that Medicaid card, no problem. Now, if they are not and they've never been part of those systems, you're not receiving any of that, then you can make a separate application to Medicaid. If you don't want OWF for one reason or another, then you can apply for you, yourself, the child, for anybody in your household. If it is just for the child, then the income doesn't matter because the child is a household of one. However, if you're applying for yourself or others in your household, then it is based on income. If you're eligible, your household or the child, if it's just a child-only case, will be issued a health card with a number that must be present each time you receive services or they receive services or a prescription is filled. Medicaid can also assist with transportation to appointments. There's a number on the back of the Medicaid card that will assist you in locating an agency that provides transportation to and from appointments. Generally, you have to make those arrangements a week or so in advance so that they're aware of when to schedule that transportation. Transportation may also be limited in different parts of the state, but managed care providers are supposed to be providing that regardless of where you live. So if you're having problems with that, also let your legal aid program know. Now, Medicaid's great until it's not, until someone refuses to cover a service or something happens. So Medicaid program uses what's called managed care companies. These are usually like your CareSource or your Molina or different places like that, that are companies who review services and determine whether they are eligible for Medicaid payment and whether they're appropriate. They often get a lot of it wrong. So they might say that a doctor, if a doctor's prescribed you a medication or a therapy or proposed a surgery, Medicaid, the managed care program may say, oh, we don't think you actually need that, and they refuse to cover it. Your child may be receiving home health services under a waiver program or other type of therapy that a managed care company will determine that it's not needed, or they'll reduce the hours. However, there are always ways to appeal those denials or those reductions or those terminations. Any action that Medicaid or the managed care company takes has to be given to you in writing, and there are always appeal rights and information in those notices to appeal. If you appeal within 15 days of getting that notice, then the benefits continue. So that means the Medicaid, everything continues as was until a hearing is held. If you wait past 15 days, you do still have 90 days to appeal. But if you wait past 15 days, then your Medicaid will stop and you won't have Medicaid during that period of time while the hearing is going on. You can still apply or still appeal, and I would encourage you to do so, but know that you won't have the benefits during that time. So it's always important that whenever you get a denial, you get a reduction, you get a termination. Well, frankly, whenever you get anything from JFS in the mail, that you open it immediately. And then once you've opened it, if it is a reduction, a denial, a termination, that you immediately request an appeal. You can always dismiss that appeal later. You can always say, I don't, there's no need. If you've talked to an attorney and they say, no, this is right, you can always dismiss it. But if you appeal quickly, you'll be eligible to keep those benefits going. These are also the kind of things that legal services handle. So if you have this situation, and you need help with that appeal or things like that, always give us a call. Finally, you might be hearing rumblings of what's called Ohio RISE, the Ohio Resilience Through Integrated Systems and Excellence Program. This is a new program that is going into effect this year. What it is a statewide managed care program for youth and children with complex behavioral, health, and multi-system needs. So it's similar to what used to be the Family and Children First Council, for those of you who are aware of that, or if your counties still have them. But it is a statewide program that is essentially tapping one managed care provider and saying, you're going to handle all of the complex cases for children who have complex behavioral needs, and might be in the Board of DD system, might be in the juvenile welfare system, might be in the foster care system, and someone needs to coordinate all the different things that Medicaid is paying for. So it's supposedly and hopefully going to help clear up a lot of confusion, a lot of denials from different Medicaid things, because it's going to be one system just kind of dealing with it versus multiple systems, ideally. It is very new, so there'll be a lot of bugs to work out. However, eligibility is open to youth who are receiving Medicaid, who are under 20 years old, and they require significant behavioral health assessment needs as measured by the Ohio Child and Adolescent Needs and Strengths Assessment, the Ohio CANS assessment. Multiple agencies can do the CANS assessment. Medicaid office, your JFS office, Children's Services, a lot of them can do the CANS assessments. But once they've received that assessment, they understand what the child's needs are, then they would be eligible to move into this Ohio RISE program, where the managed care program changes or agency changes, and kind of everything's being held by one entity. It's meant for youth who are at risk of out-of-home placement. So possibly these would be kiddos that would be kept out of kinship care, or like the idea would be that they wouldn't be a case open on those kiddos, so they wouldn't be removed and placed in kinship care situations. But we also know that there are kinship caregivers who don't go through the system and just have kids who are kind of dropped on them, and that they might also need to apply on behalf of the kids. So it's important for me to mention it here because it is a new program that not a lot of people are aware of. Other programs to be aware of for health would be Help Me Grow, which is a support program providing custodial education, home visiting, early intervention, and connection to resources for families with young children under the age of 3. There's a Help Me Grow program in every county. It is supposed to be a support system for you. You do not have to be the bio parent. To have the child in your home, you're eligible. So reach out to Help Me Grow if you're having some kiddos with some behavioral needs early on, or they're not meeting milestones, things like that. Other agencies might flag it for you, or the doctor might flag it for you, but just be aware that it is out there. There's also the Bureau for Children with Medical Handicaps and the Sickle Cell Service Program. They're both operated by the Ohio Department of Health, just to provide additional resources for kiddos with a little extra need or have specific disabilities or diagnoses. So child care vouchers are publicly funded child care or vouchers to pay for any kind of like daycare, things like that you might need. There's different levels. So generally the publicly funded, like Title X childcare, it's up to 142% FPL for the initial eligibility. So what it basically is trying to find people who are unemployed or underemployed because of need of childcare. And then once you enroll, they assume you can then get job or be able to get increased hours. So then they up the eligibility to 300%. So you have to be under 142% to apply. And then once you've applied and you get your job and kind of work more hours, then that eligibility goes up to 300% in order to maintain that voucher for them to pay for childcare. There's an application number for JFS. Contact JFS. They can help you walk through that process. Like I said, PRC, Prevention Retention Contingency Funds, have been expanding to help kinship caregivers. And one area that they have expanded it specifically is for caregiving services. And what that is for 12 months of assistance to help pay for childcare. So they understand that sometimes kiddos are just kind of dropped on you. You're working and you're like, hey, I've got this kid now at 5 years old or 3 years old. I can't, I'm working now and I wasn't expecting this. How am I going to care for this child and work at the same time and get my life figured out? So the PRC funds that have been extended, these I believe are statewide. They were offered to everybody in the state. I think every county accepted them, but I'm not sure. But it's 12 months of assistance to pay for childcare. You can renew it. I don't exactly know the amount of time. Your income counts, and this is for that space between the 143 to 200%. So if you're ever over the 142% for the original child care voucher, this is a voucher that takes your threshold up to 200% because you're a kinship caregiver. I know it's confusing, but what it does is essentially the same thing as a child care voucher, but it goes up to 200% because you're a kinship caregiver, and PRC funds cover the rest. There's also additional services to help for childcare and clothing and beds. That only includes the child's income if you're even over that 200% threshold, but it's for a smaller period of time of 4 months of assistance in a 12-month period to assist with childcare, clothing, and things like that. And that's a little bit more flexible than just the caregiving services. And then, like I said earlier, there are other assistance available by the county. So those are to help with childcare expenses for a caregiver. There are other services. There are adoption assistance and post-adoption special services subsidies that are both federal and state. These are generally for kiddos who came out of foster care or were adopted out of foster care or were adopted 16 to 17 years old and have a special needs as defined by the state. So generally, it was because whenever they were back in the day, whenever there was like orphanages and that kind of thing, they were finding it very hard to adopt out special needs kids. So they created these subsidies as like incentives. Like, well, hey, we'll help pay for those medical expenses that they're not coming out of your pocket. It's administered by the local children's services agencies. And if you think you might qualify because you did adopt a child out of foster care, even if it's your kin, like your kinship care, you adopted them afterwards from foster care, or they were older and they have special needs and they were in foster care, then you might be eligible. Additionally, we talked about there's also child support. If the parents of the children are ordered to pay child support, you're not receiving OWF, the child support should be payable to you if they're living in your home full time. And then local child support enforcement agency will provide services to obtain and maintain child support at no cost to you. The problem, however, is they can't give you money if they don't get it. So a lot of the problem is that, yeah, I hear the story a lot that like, yeah, I have child support ordered to me, but bio parent doesn't pay it. He dodges it. He doesn't tell people when they work, that kind of thing. And that can happen. That's why I always recommend that people go on OWF child only, because it's not time limited, and they go after them for child support, and then it's the state's problem. And they're the ones who are having to get his taxes and that kind of stuff. There's also the Home Energy Assistance Program, HEAP, Home Weatherization, Other Housing Assistance. HEAP and weatherization are energy assistance programs for low-income families to either help you weatherize a home that you own, get a new roof, get new heat systems, get you air conditioning. They also have them for summer crisis as well, to help pay with bills, propane, that kind of stuff. Or if you are renting, then it also helps pay for those bills, those heating bills, those electric bills that you're using to heat your house in the winter. You can contact your local community action organization agency. They're the ones who generally manage those grants for the county. You may also be eligible for federally subsidized housing. So check your local housing authority for more information. If you're already receiving a voucher or already in subsidized housing, but you get more kiddos, or you get a kiddo and you don't have the bedrooms for it, make sure that you let them know so that they can increase your housing once one becomes available. Finally, I'm going to go over a little quickly of the Ohio Kinship and Adoption Navigator Program. If you're not aware, this is Ohio CAN. It's a statewide, flexible, responsive kinship and adoption navigator program designed to assist children and caregivers and families. There's a website you can go to. It is region-based, so there's different regions in the state that kind of understand what the availability of resources are in your agency. The idea is that you can call one phone number and say, hey, I'm a kinship caregiver. They'll do a little bit of screening for you, and they'll see kind of what you need, and they'll print out an individual plan for you that says, here are all the resources in your agency or in your region that is available to you. Here's how you contact them and get in touch with them, and here's how you kind of work through that process. But they're supposed to be regionally so that they are knowledgeable about what's available in your region. There are 2 cohorts. So some of the regions are in what's called cohort 1 versus cohort 2. Cohort 1 does a little bit more hands-on work. The whole reason for it is because they're doing they're trying to get federal funding, and they have to have research on what process is better. So they have to have a control group. And region 2 is the control group. So region 1, not region 1, but cohort 1 gets the hands-on, they will actually help you make the individual contacts. They'll work with you. They'll hands-on be a caseworker for you to make sure that you're getting all the needs you meet. Region 2 is just getting that plan. They're getting the plan with just phone numbers and saying, here's who you contact. They don't do the warm handoff kind of process with you. So depending on where you are in the state, you might get different levels of service. And that's why. But either way, they work directly with you via phone, text, or email to kind of understand your unique needs. They then provide a personalized resource and referral plan using a database of extensive services in each region. And then they work with you either hands-on or afterwards to make sure that those resources were useful for you. There is a statewide phone line, so anywhere, regardless of where you are, you call the number and they will get you to the right region. It is 1-844-644-6526. 1-844 Ohio CAN with a K. Okay, and then of course, as always, if you have any issues or any problems with benefits, there are legal aid services. Southeastern Ohio Legal Services covers 30 counties throughout Southeast and Central Ohio. However, every single county in Ohio is served by a legal aid program. So if you're having problems and you're low income and you need additional assistance, I recommend going to ohiolegalhelp.org and kind of finding out who your legal services provider is and making a call to them to see if you can get assistance.
Thank you, everyone. And I hope you have a great rest of your week. Thank you again so much to Baylee as well.
Thanks, everyone. If you have any additional questions, send them to Angela and I'll make sure I get those answered for you.
Yes.
All right, take care. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.